Top Med Talk.
This is Top Med Talk, the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, Evidence-Based Perioperative Medicine. The EBPOM World Congress is taking place this year between the 7th and the 9th of July at the British Library in London. Check out ebpom.org now.
Hello, welcome back to Top Med Talk. I'm Andy Cumpstey, I'm your host, and I'm here at the American Society of Anesthesiologists annual meeting. That's Anesthesiology 2025, here in the beautiful San Antonio. It's a real pleasure to be joined by my co-host, Desiree Chappell.
Thanks for taking the lead on this one.
And it's a real pleasure to introduce our guest today, Joyce Wahr, who's giving the Severinghaus Lecture at the meeting. And we're going to hear all about that in a second. But before we go into that, Joyce, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you work and worked in the past, with your background?
Certainly. I actually started in a surgery residency and then decided I liked things on the other side of the drape and was fortunate enough to get a spot at UCSF. And the day before I'm to begin, up walks John Severinghaus, who said, I'm John Severinghaus, and I've been assigned to be your minder for the next week. And I was gobsmacked and horrified, knowing I would be completely stupid. Well, he's a genius, right?
Yeah.
But he was just so genuine and so warm. So the chance to give the Severinghaus Lecture is
so
just how sweet is that?
Yeah.
Right. What an incredible honor. But anyway, so then went to Michigan, did years and years as a cardiac anesthesiologist, thoracic anesthesiologist. And then my husband started a medical device company in Minnesota. So when we moved, I sort of took a little bit of a break, not sure I knew what I wanted to do. And the Society of Cardiovascular Anesthesiologists was initiating a large project with Peter Pronovost in patient safety in the cardiac operating room. So that was how I got into patient safety. And then it was just, I got so enchanted with the subject, read everything, all of James Reason's books and then more and more into the history of cognitive psychology and how we think. And I feel like I continue to learn every day something I didn't know and hadn't even thought about.
What a lovely story about how you met John Severinghaus before you given this lecture. Can you tell our listeners all around the world, what's the title of this lecture going to be?
It is, It's Not Your Fault, The Cognitive Basis of Error. And then right at the beginning, I say, but a caveat, we're going to talk about how your subconscious generates errors you can't see, you can't prevent, you can't predict, and you may not even perceive that you have made an error. It's that far out of your control. How can it possibly be your fault? But then we're also going to talk about the barriers and interventions that are available to us to prevent our errors from actually reaching and harming a patient. So it will be both of those subjects. And of course, if we're not enacting the barriers and the patient is harmed, then it is our fault.
Sounds fascinating. I can't wait. Let's dive in and give our listeners a bit of a sneak preview. So let's start with the first of those points then. So the cognitive basis of medical error, not medical error, but the cognitive basis specifically.
Any error. So I base a lot of this on the construct in Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Of course, we all know that we think on different planes. The fast, unconscious, automatic, effortless, driving a car 70 miles an hour, while our conscious, slow, deductive mind is trying to figure out how to safely anesthetize that fragile mitral valve patient tomorrow. And so we have these two systems. They very often operate completely independently, but they are never isolated. So system one says, traffic jam. System two stops thinking about the patient, starts to think about what route can I take to get to work on time. The two are really integrated at all times. But I think the thing that's been fascinating to me is how powerful system one is. I'm sure we've all had the thought about, but I see something, it comes to the optical cortex, who tells me what that is? And the person who tells you, or the thing that tells, is system one. So system one is continually scanning the environment around us, and it doesn't show you the raw data. That looks back into its mental models that it has accumulated since the time you were born, tries to find a mental model that it knows, and then it says, oh, here's where you are, here's what's happening, and here's maybe what you need to do. And this is happening instantaneously, continuously, and we are completely unaware that that's going on. The problem becomes system one is built for speed, not for precision. And so when it looks for a mental model, it takes the most accessible one. It doesn't hunt and search for the most accurate one. So it can alter what it presents to you as reality. If there's something in reality that doesn't agree with its mental model, it doesn't change the mental model. It subtly changes the perception it's going to present to your consciousness. You want a story on that?
Yeah, I do. Actually,
So this is a study done years ago where test subjects, all college students, were willing to do this. And they would just be flashed a schematic of a bedroom where two rectangles represented twin beds, square in the middle of the nightstand, and on the nightstand, one of those analog old alarm clocks with little ringy-dingy things on it. And everybody got, oh, that was a bedroom. They all said, yeah, the alarm clock. And then they were asked what time was on the clock, and they had an answer, but they differed. Some said 6, some said 7. And when they were pressed, they were quite sure, they were confident that that was the time that they saw. There were no hands on the clock.
oh, wow. So what time they normally wake up?
And system one does not have a mental model of a clock without hands. So it uses the most accessible clock model, which has hands, and it very helpfully adds that to the perception it presents to your consciousness.
Fascinating.
That really is.
And here's another one. Academic faculty was filming some inductions and intubations, and he showed me one where intubation's fine, induction's smooth, ventilator, tidying up, and the resident goes, oh my goodness, the CO2 trace just disappeared. It was there, I saw it, and now it's gone.
It was never there to begin with.
It was never there. And the faculty also said, oh yes, I saw it. It was never there. And so then we come to our case reports, tranexamic acid being put in intrathecally. And when providers get caught in these disastrous syringe swaps, vial swaps, very often they'll say, but I did read the label.
I thought I did, yeah.
They were quite sure they read the label, and I'm sure that they did.
Yeah.
They're doing a spinal. The nurse may show them the ampules as they crack it for you to draw it up. You have no mental model that involves putting TXA intrathecally. And so when you look at the ampule, especially when it looks quite similar to bupivacaine, these examples are on the APSF website. When they look that alike, System 1 uses the mental model it has. You've done 100 spinals with your bupivacaine, and I think it puts the hands on the clock, and it puts bupivacaine on the ampule.
When I read the title, I thought it said cognitive bias, not basis. But it's the same kind of thing. You have a bias
Yes.
of all of these things, like the recency bias, and I always do it this way, and that's what it must be.
Our System 1 is auto-correcting reality to make a coherent story with the mental models it has. And that's why eyewitnesses become so unreliable. We each have different experiences, different mental models.
Perceptions of what reality is.
And so when System 1 presents a reality, yours is going to be just a little different than yours.
Yeah.
And we don't perceive this. We can't perceive it. And in the talk, I'm going to talk about the fact that cognitive psychologists have known this forever. 1881, a book written called Illusions, which solely called the counterfeiting of immediate knowledge.
Oh.
So they've been aware of it, but we physicians aren't. And we don't recognize the dangers, perhaps, of System 1 in this way.
So as you're sitting here talking, we all think we do a fantastic job. We're smart. You think, I can't make mistakes. But when you said the CO2 tracing, I've done that. We've all done things like that. And I thought that was up there. I can't believe I missed that. Or the blood pressure tracing whenever you're doing an A-line and it's like not there. I mean, we all do that. So this is not, because of how smart you are or how intuitive you are or anything like that. This is completely just.
It's just how System 1 works. And again, we don't want to hobble System 1. It is what makes us great. It is what makes us fantastic experts, rescue patients at times.
Yeah, when you can come in and see what.
Right. When you need to move quickly, as Sachin talked about this morning, making those fast decisions. Those fast decisions are not System 2.
No, they're definitely System 1.
They're definitely System 1. And again, we don't want to live in fear of it at all times.
Right.
We just want to put the barriers in place that will prevent some of those errors from happening. For example, pre-filled syringes.
Yeah.
Eliminates every potential vial swap, right? Already in the syringe. You could still have syringe swaps, but now if we add barcode reading in, you begin to see you're really increasing the chances that any error you make won't get to the patient. Your CO2 trace, it wouldn't have been long before your alarm started going off.
Right. Right.
So I think it's a great point you make that we rely on this System 1. That although we talk about the dangers, we can't get rid of it and we need it. So we don't want to get rid of it. But protecting ourselves against the dangers, I think, as you say, is key. But I found it really interesting that a lot of the protections that we talk about are often system protections. And I think that's great to a point where the system should be there to protect us. But do we have an individual role to play in that as well? Should we be monitoring it or checking on it ourselves as well as the system around us?
How's an individual?
Very often with the syringe errors, Elliot Grigg always talks about the right side of our cockpit is full of forcing functions. Pin indexing, anti-hypoxia valves, all of those good things. The left side of our cockpit looks like it did in 1981. And when we make errors on the left side, the answer isn't to try and find a forcing function, it's to tell you to try harder. But I'm here to tell you, you cannot try harder. You don't control System 1, so it can't try harder. System 2 can try harder, but it has limited reserves of effort. Remember, System 2 is effortful. 2 times 2, 4 times 6, 9 times 3, effortless.
Yeah.
You memorize that. It's in your mental model. 13 times 27, quick.
I can't do it. I can't do simple math under duress anyway, but it's.
But anybody who hears that go, oh, that's not going to be fun. And if you're hiking with a friend going up a hill and they say, I really want you to tell me what 13 times 27 is, you will get there. First principles, 10 times 27, 270 and 3 times, you would get there. You would stop hiking because physical activity and mental activity draw from the same source and emotional activity. So if you're in the operating room, you're a bit fatigued from a difficult call rotation. You've been disciplining yourself to not snap at the surgeon, and you've been physical, moving around, checking the monitors, going and grabbing this equipment. You do not have the bandwidth to bring your system to every single little System 1 thing, action sequence that you do. You cannot try harder. You can try harder for a few seconds and then that dissipates.
Oh. So it's still, so we individually still have to, I mean, there's still ways that we can ensure that we're not making mistakes, but from a systems level, I mean, our job is becoming much more complex. I mean, every new data point that we're getting, I mean, it's getting more difficult.
Right. But those forcing functions are available. If you go back, Bob Stolting and APSF and their first medication safety summit, they told us what to do. They said, these are the things that experts say, if you do these, you'll reduce the risk of error. They just bought 3 surgery robots at $2 million each. They can't afford it. They're choosing to spend the money on something else. And our role is to demand those safety features. And we have to accept the fact System 1's running the show. We don't want to hobble it. We will make mistakes. So let's demand those barriers that we know will keep patients safer. And that's what we should focus on.
100%. I'm on the APSF board of directors as well. So I'm like, shout that from the rooftops.
Exactly.
So how do we make that business case then when we're up against the £2 million robots or the whatever else the other priority costs are? I mean, do we have data around how often this is happening, whether it's increasing, whether what we're doing is working and it's decreasing? Do we have that sort of?
So Karen Nanji is doing really remarkable work in this area. So she has built a decision support system. You should have her on a podcast. Medication administration support system. And where it's now in most of the ORs at Mass General. And so they have a ton of data on efficiency, even around decision making, because you pick up and sweep a syringe and the Epic, because it sits right on top of Epic, your monitor will say the correct dose for this patient because they have renal failure.
Oh.
Or the redosing schedule for cefazolin is every 4 hours because of their renal condition. You make your decisions much more quickly. So the bean counters, like efficiency, we talk about drug capturing the costs. And so there are arguments that can be brought. I know safety does not resonate with them.
It's quantify. I mean, you really have to be able to quantify the cost of complications and these errors to have that significant. I mean, it is a uphill battle, but it's one that I think when you start talking their language, it does make a difference.
Right.
For sure. One of the things, so this is great to have this part of the conversation because it's so important for us to advocate for our patients and ensure that we are able to put these processes in place. But from a personal standpoint, to me, hearing this, because I deal with a lot of adverse events, coaching in my role in quality, and it's so hard on an individual, like when we make a mistake. I mean, to me, this is therapeutic for me to hear this, to say it's truly not, it's not me, it's not you. This is the way our brain is. This is the way our thought process is, these systems work. Have you published that work? Are you working on it?
Well, this work is,
out there in general.
It's out there.
But I mean, from the context from ours.
But we don't get cognitive education in medical school.
I know.
And we physicians don't talk about this. We do accept the fact that we make mistakes all the time. You're driving, you miss your turnoff.
Yeah.
Or you go left to work when you should have gone right to go to the soccer game. We accept those errors. But we think that we should never make an error in the operating room because it matters so much. But System 1 isn't different,
right?
Just because you've walked into the operating room. It is still System 1.
Yeah.
Is there a risk? So it means during my training time, I can, not by day to date, but I can definitely remember an increase in human factors and by teaching and patient safety culture, which was always there throughout my training, was definitely not to the same level as when I started as when I've finished.
Correct.
Are we perhaps a victim of our own success? And that when we still go on and make that error, having had extra training, are we at risk of almost beating ourselves up more because we've still done that despite the teaching? Can we go too far with this? Is there a balance to have?
I'm not sure, you're in quality. You could probably speak to that as well. But I think we can't put one single barrier in place that will capture every area. For syringe swaps, the solution will be different than for vial swaps. And forgetting to pull the wire with a central line, the solution is going to be different for that. So that's why quality report or incident report is so critical.
And near miss reporting.
So that then you can look at that and say, wow, TXA, bupivacaine, just give, pharmacy should only supply TXA in a mini bag.
Yeah, absolutely.
Only in a mini bag. So as those errors pop up, maybe we can capture it with the first case report, solve the problem, and not have it be the vincristine story, where it was 35 years after MD Anderson said vincristine should only be supplied in a mini bag. WHO said it, ISMP said it, but they didn't demand it. 30 years after that, 42% of U.S. hospitals were still supplying methotrexate and vincristine in identical syringes with white labels on it. And when you ask the pharmacist, they say, well, you just have to read the label. And there's where we need to push back and say, we can't read the label.
Yeah.
We can't.
It's like we need to get into the pharmacology or the pharmacist schools, and their training and education, and get to them and let them know about the errors and things that are made because of those decisions too. I mean, I would assume they know those kind of things. I mean, it's basic, but maybe they don't understand when you're sitting there in front of a patient and you're having epi or something else. Your system one is taking over.
Your system one is taking over. And our pharmacists usually want to support us. At Minnesota, we have a wonderful head of pharmacy, and he really wants to do those things, but the leadership was cutting his budget.
Yeah.
But that's what I think we anesthesiologists have a very powerful voice.
Yeah.
Half of a hospital's revenue happens in the operating room. Surgery robots don't increase your revenue, right?
Yeah.
But I think you're right with that, and that system approach, the budget constraints on the pharmacy. I mean, any of these individual incidents, we can say, how did I not see the CO2 trace, or how did I switch the vial? But you didn't just switch the vial. You switched the vial in a busy list where the patient had arrived late, or there was a change that day, or you slept in because you were on call the night before. Or there's a whole host of system factors around that one episode, which it's important for people to remember. But it's hard to then go back and look at that and not blame yourself despite all that happening. But then you're often the one that ends up writing the next report. It's a difficult thing to balance, isn't it?
And it's terrible when the errors are the same, but most of our medication swaps, syringe swaps, are innocuous. We gave more rocuronium when we meant to give neostigmine, which is a quite common swap, versus undiluted dopamine when you meant to give doxygram.
Yeah.
And the difference between those two is chance.
Yeah.
It was not that this person was more careful than the dopamine. It's the same error.
Yeah.
The same factors and the same solution.
Yeah. Okay. So just a big question as we end here. We're sitting in the exhibit hall and we see all kinds of technology that we're hearing can help us do our job better. So improve outcomes. What do we see as technology? I mean, we've had millions of conversations about AI over the years here and throughout our industry, not millions, but a lot. Where do you see technology stepping in to help us prevent errors like this?
Again, I go back to Karen Nanji's, it's called guided OR and all barcode administration.
Yeah.
And so when you sweep the barcode, that's the machine can say you're giving that medication too early.
Yeah.
Or that's the wrong dose. Or
I've even seen this where it attaches to your like an inline thing, and then as soon as you give it on there, then it says what you're giving.
Yeah, the difficulty with that one is the little barcode is right around the tip, the lure tip.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's how it reads it, is when it's turned in. I thought it was brilliant when I heard it.
But there's all kinds of
Okay.
different things out there.
2 big companies giving us pre-filled syringes, 12 years ago? They've disappeared because they couldn't make it because not enough hospitals and not enough anesthesiologists say, you've got to buy this for us. And here's why. And so I think they will come back. I think we will recognize that we definitely need them. But it goes in fits and starts, doesn't it?
So it's not your fault, but we have a duty to our patients to advocate for them.
Yes.
So.
Well, we could talk about this all day. Thank you so much for coming, Joyce. And I'm really looking forward to the lecture.
All right.
Sorry to cut it short there, but really fantastic session.
Well, thank you so much for having me. You can tell I'm really passionate.
You're going to be coming back. This is a great conversation. We need to hear more about this for sure.
Thank you for joining us here on Top Med Talk. You can find this podcast and all our others on our website. That's topmedtalk.com. You'll find us on your social media application of choice. We're on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, we're on Blue Sky, we're on all of them. If you do go one of those, please do hit like, hit subscribe. It really makes a difference to us at this end. Of course, you need to thank our fantastic sponsors, without whom we couldn't keep Top Med Talk free and open access. And this year, that's BD Advanced Patient Monitoring and GE Healthcare. Sitting here in the beautiful San Antonio, we need to give a huge thanks to the American Society of Anesthesiologists, who've given us a fantastic booth and brought us fantastic guests.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Top Med Talk.
Top Med Talk is the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, Evidence-Based Perioperative Medicine. Join clinicians from around the world at EBPOM World Congress 2026 between the 7th and the 9th of July at the British Library in London. 3 days of evidence-based perioperative medicine, global insights and expert debate, featuring speakers including Michael Marmot and Ken Rockwood. Go now to ebpom.org. That's ebpom.org.